Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey guys, just wanted to offer you a free gift here as a part of being a listener of my show. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can get the top 30 books and top 30 success quotes that every man must live by. So obviously every show we talk about books and we talk about success quotes. And so I've compiled the best of the best out of the last 100 episodes into a short guide. So kfmfree.com and it's all yours. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Jason Treu, a business and executive coach. He's the author of the best-selling book, Social Wealth: How to Build Extraordinary Relationships by Transforming the Way We Live, Love, Lead, and Network. Jason, happy to have you here on the show.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on, Andrew, and speak to your fantastic tribe.
All right, always a pleasure. And now let's dive in with a favorite success quote of yours or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey.
Sure. So this is the quote. It's by my favorite author, Brené Brown, and her quote is, "If you think dealing with issues like worthiness and authenticity and vulnerability are not worthwhile because there are more pressing issues like the bottom line or attendance or standardized test scores, you are sadly mistaken. It underpins everything."
And so what does that quote mean to you?
Well, I feel like the one thing that we don't talk about, our emotions run everything, and emotions are driving the car, and cognition and behavior in the back seat for every man and woman that is living today on the planet Earth. And when you understand that we're all making up stories and we operate life on probably maybe 5 to 10% of facts, and the rest of it is just a bunch of stories we're making up, you realize that understanding your own emotions are the key. And I've asked people and talked to entrepreneurs, and I'm working with really successful leaders. And when they can understand their own emotions and read other people's emotions, as well as living in more uncertainty than a normal person can in a healthy way, they lead at an incredible pace and their life is operating on the highest level. And those two qualities, I find, are the number one and number two ways that people are successful in this life beyond everything else. I mean, I talk about relationships, and that's obviously extremely important. That is the key. But if you're not aligned internally like that, your external world just won't work.
Yeah. Why do you think this is something lacking in society today?
Because I think people just think that there are other things more important. And how can emotions play that big of a role in your life? And we're not taught that, right? Because we go in the educational process in skill sets like that, like leadership, networking, influence, persuasion, and even self-development. It's not something that is really prized by the educational community. I mean, you don't see anyone at Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, or Stanford talking about, well, let's talk about our emotions and how they're affecting our business relationships and the bottom line, right? You're seeing some experts now more and more talking about it, but there are not even that many out there. And I just think it's one of those things that people are really being misled on, and it's causing them to have precipitous crashes in their lives later on that are bringing people to their knees in so many ways. And you don't see this happening in the boardroom or anywhere else, that people are really being taught these skill sets or even reaching out. And so it's not even about resources. Money doesn't matter. The people who have money don't even do this. So it's not even about the people who don't have it. I think that we need to have a more conversation about what really matters and what's actually going to help people, really create the life, relationships, and business that they love.
Yeah. I'm excited for this. And before we dive into kind of this main topic here, how'd you get started with this? Were you always like this? Were you always kind of going really talking about your emotions and working on your communication and relationships? How'd you get started with all this? And
well, I actually probably worked in the opposite way. I went to law school, and that taught me probably many bad skills for everything. And then I decided, I was interviewing my second year in New York City for jobs for the summer, and I thought I'd ask a softball question at the end. And this is when I was extremely ignorant about life. And so I ended asking people, are you happy? And every person from partner levels at big law firms to associates all had the longest pause to answer of any question I asked. And these interviews were an hour and a half long. And I realized at that point that they were either lying, they didn't believe what they were saying, or they were just trying to make up something along the way that may have been half truth. And so that scared me considerably. And I decided, I need to do something else in my life besides being in a place where people are not happy with what they do. And when you have 30 people giving you the similar answers, you're in the wrong place. So I decided to go to Silicon Valley in technology world. And I was there before the dot-coms took off and then through all of that in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it was great. I got to work with Steve Jobs when he came back to Apple. I got to meet Mark Cuban when he sold to Yahoo. I got to work with a lot of great, fantastic people. And it was awesome. I'm a social person. I'm an extrovert. That's who I am. But the challenge I found over time, and I wasn't really aware of this, was that I was sitting in the back room in an office more and more by myself and less out there talking to the executives of my company and out there meeting with media, analysts, and just customers and prospects and other people. And my happiness started to sink down. And I never really made the equation. All that happened was I'd have huge swings where I'd be really productive and I'd be knocking it out of the park and it'd be awesome. And then I'd be points when I'd take this nosedive. And I just couldn't figure out what it was. And so for the longest time, I just kind of went back in this pattern and went to different jobs and worked in different companies like Hewlett Packard. And then, I just started to ask some questions like there has to be something more. I wasn't happy. I wasn't loving what I was doing. And so I just started reading books. I was reading Keith Ferrazzi's book a long time about networking, and I started to just do some more networking. And I found that the more networking I was doing, talking to people, what they were doing in jobs, and I had no idea about what I wanted to do next or even where to even start, that I started to find I just love being with people. So there has to be something there. And then a few years later, I had a couple friends of mine have friends who were moving from one big city to another. And I decided to help them. And they were guys that were about 30 years old, introverted, and, more engineering types. And I helped them, move to another city, create a social life, even figure out how to navigate their own jobs. And in 3 months, they had better lives than the 30 years that they were in the cities they came from. So I knew I had something. And so I approached a friend of mine in LA who had sort of a dating and relationship business and pitched him an idea of sort of jumpstart your social life, like how to build a social life in 30 days or less, and just helping people really create the life that they wanted to lead. And so I just was doing that on the side, and I had a big falling out with my business partner, and I didn't really want to do that. I really wanted to kind of work with more business and entrepreneurs and executives along the way, and just, started that up. And along the way, I started to realize that, emotions played a bigger and bigger role, because I started having clients, and this is probably 5 years ago, that were making a lot of progress building relationships and meeting people, much more than they had ever before. But something was stopping them from building these deeper relationships, and I couldn't replicate what I was doing. And I'd take a really look inside of saying, okay, there must be something I'm teaching. It can't be them. It has to be me, because it can't be dozens of people. So I started to really do a deep dive and realizing that, emotions were the key. And I started to look and figure out that, belonging and connection were my top emotions in my life. And when those weren't getting filled up, the rest of my emotions weren't as well. And so I had to find ways where I put myself in a situation where those were happening, and that was happening. And so I started to talk to people, my clients, about more inner work, and I've refined that over the years, and really talking about, more of authenticity, vulnerability, speaking your truth, and then leading with generosity within boundaries when you're, living life. And that stuff has just made the world of difference in everyone I work with and even come in contact with, friends or other people.
Yeah. What was the aha moment for writing the book, Social Wealth?
Well, what happened was I had a podcast a few years ago, and I just was like, I wanted to start one. And I was like, I want to start a podcast to talk to really super smart people. And I didn't know what I wanted to do the book on, but I wanted something on how to build better relationships with people. And I was like, I need to understand and get in the mind of successful people across the world in a wide range of scope of living life. And so that was really it. And I was in the process, my business partner, I didn't think this relationship would continue on for a long time. And I was like, I just got to start somewhere. So I just said, I'm going to go in massive immersion and I'm going to let the data come out to me. And I'm going to let that tell me where I need to lead. And I did that. And then I looked on Amazon and I thought to myself, there's a lot of relationships books out there, but there really is no blueprint and how-to guide. I mean, there's nothing that if you do this, this, and this is how you're going to start creating better relationships and even a place to start, especially personally and professionally both, because they're really emanating from the same place. And so I was like, okay, well, there's a hole, there's a need, and I have a lot of fantastic data, and I did a lot more research and spent like about 15 months working on the book, and then it just came to life.
Yeah. And so if someone's an introvert, let's say their social life just isn't where they want it to be. They focus so much on work and just kind of, what's really right in front of them. And so, their social life kind of gets put on the back burner.
Yep.
What advice would you give to someone who is kind of that introverted type of guy and is really focused just on work and maybe like their relationship?
Well, I would tell the same thing to an introvert, to an extrovert to start off with. The best places to go are going to charities and nonprofits, meaning museums, the symphony, the opera, because that is where the most powerful people in the world live. That's where the wealthy people live. That's where your clients go. That's where your colleagues will live. That's where your former bosses will be. So go to those places. And the great thing about them is most of them happen Wednesday to Friday. They're 6 to 8 p.m., sometimes on the weekend. But it's easier to go because it's time bounded, right? You don't have to go and spend 4 hours on a Friday or Saturday night going out. In fact, you don't need to go on the weekend at all. You just have to go out a few nights a week to these places. Everyone showing up is there to be social, which you can't say about any other place, really. So that's a fantastic opportunity for you because it's easier to talk to people in environments like that because their defenses are down. It's also easier because their mindset is about giving, helping, and inspiring. That's not every person, but it's a lot of people. So again, that makes it so much easier for people. And then if you are an introvert, one thing you can do that I have my clients do all the time that are in this mode is they can volunteer. And what you do is you ask to volunteer at the check-in table where people check in, and you ask for the first or second shift that's on the list, and you'll start meeting people. So when you walk into the event, you'll have met a lot of people the second time, not the first time. And it's a lot more comfortable to do that than you would just walking in cold. And you get to see the room. You're more familiar. You're feeling more comfortable. So people also have social anxiety that works for. And then you can just kill it. And these events, too, are great because people continually come back. So even if you don't get contact information or can't meet everyone, you can meet a lot of people. And I find you can meet, people can meet in the low side 5 people to the high side 20 people an hour. And I mean, that's more people than most people meet in a year or years.
Yeah. So you said operas, nonprofits,
and charity events
and
like
charity events.
United Way and Cancer Leukemia Society. There's tons of them out there. Like I belong to Young Texans Against Cancer, and I'm going to an event on Thursday. If you just Google literally young professionals and charity, young professionals and gala event, young professionals and anything, be a social calendar or philanthropy calendar, you're going to find things in your city that are coming up, right? And you can even volunteer at a food bank or anything else like that, or a children's hospital or a charity. And so you could start meeting people, right? There's so many things that you can do for people. And if you're introverted, the key thing is having time-bound things that you can put in your calendar that you can come in and out of, and you don't have to feel exhausted spending an enormous amount of time, and you can plan them out.
I like this. Yeah. And, we got the event, like going out to these places, that helps kind of identifying that. I've always said, guys, check out this website, meetup.com. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And just finding events that you really are interested in. So you're there because you want to be there. In your book, chapter 3 is about these 12 power principles of social success. Could you briefly go through some of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one of the key things that when you start to go out and meet people is you have to understand how to build a relationship. Like, what does that look like? I talk all the time about building rapport, likability, and trust, because that's really the key. And when it comes to rapport, the key thing is you want to tap into people's emotions and what really matters to them. And I find that you can skip a lot of meaningless questions. And what I do now in all my interactions, and I have for a while, is I'll ask people, like, what's going on for the weekend? If it's an event, saying, do you come to many events? Do you belong to this organization? I'll just shoot them a couple of basic questions. And I'll ask them a question like, what are you passionate about? Like, what are you working or doing in your life that you're really excited about? Because that's tapping into someone's emotions. And people love talking about that, because even if it's in a business setting, a lot of times they're not excited about the business or the company they're working in. They're excited about something else that they're doing. And then, they'll say whatever it is, and then I'll ask them a question. So what are you have any challenges with that? Do you need any help around that? Because then you can help that person. And, they may or may not need it, but that's a great way that you can exchange information with them, right? That's one way to do it. I also tell people, I'm going to a lot of events in the city and I'm exploring things, and I'll be happy to shoot you some events and tell you what's going on. Let's just exchange information. I literally take out my phone and hand it to them. And that could be for men, women, that could be platonic, that could be someone I'm interested in. It doesn't matter. Everyone's going to give you their information, because people want to do fun things and they don't know what to do, mostly because they're lazy. And it's pretty easy at that point to start going out and doing that. And when it comes to likability, the key is, and I talk about this, is a simple thing called listen and be present. Right? You cannot talk to someone 10 feet away from you. It's physically impossible. So talk to the person in front of you, give them good eye contact, listen, be an active listener, repeat a little bit what they're saying, be engaged in the moment. That'll help. And then the trust part of it is, I said before, is just lead with giving, helping, inspiring people. The best thing you can do ever is introduce people to other people. And a really easy way to think about this, I do this all the time, and I'll introduce strangers to strangers. And this is literally how I do it every time. Let's say I'm going up to a bar, right? Let's say it's at a charity event. Could be really anywhere. It doesn't really matter. Someone's on my right, and I'll say, hey, what's going on? How's your week going? And they'll say whatever they're going to say. And oftentimes, I don't even ask them what their name is. And there's someone right on my left, and I'm standing there anyway, so I might as well make the most of the time I'm there, because I'm still waiting for getting a drink or whatever I'm waiting for. And the person on the left, I say the same thing, what's going on? And they'll say something, I'm like, hey, do you guys know each other? And I'll literally move my index fingers from my body, and I'll move them across my body and just point to each other. Hey, you both should meet each other. And I don't even know their names. And people will start talking. And I've done this hundreds of thousands of times, and no one's ever slapped me, thrown water at me, gotten upset, gotten mad. I mean, some people, they say hi and they move on, but a lot of times the conversation will continue. And then someone will be like behind me or next to me, and I'll do the same thing, and I'll bring 3 or 4 people into the conversation, and they don't even know each other. And we'll start meeting each other, and people are really, excited about that. And then what happens is, a byproduct is, they will then introduce me to people that they're with. So now, I could meet 8, 12 people that I don't even know. And I just did it, and I don't even know the people's names. And they introduce each other and tell each other their names in front of me. And it's easy to do, free, and why not?
And so this is some of that social wealth. You're really, you're kind of building up your own credibility kind of in that environment right there. It's like, wow, this guy knows everyone he's introducing, even though you're just meeting them for the first time. But let's see here. How does this benefit you? Like, let's go into, like, you're doing all this work at this event, you're introducing people. Now, what happens for you here?
Well, I mean, one, you never know who you're going to meet. And every person you meet has a network behind them, right? So most people, the network behind them, they may have anywhere from 2 to 3 good friends up to 20, depending on who they know, meaning people that they know really well, that they can tap into at a moment's notice. And the network beyond that could be hundreds. So you can tap into that network if you need help. You just have to ask them, right? Because you're already leading with giving, because you're introducing them to someone else. And so people want to help you at that point, because no one does that to them. Remember, the only people that introduce people to other people typically are people's really good friends. Or if you lead with doing it, that's really it. I mean, it just doesn't happen all the time. And I talk to people, and it's not something that goes on. So you put yourself in a place psychologically where you're in someone's inner circle, even when you're an acquaintance. And that's an extremely powerful place to be in life. And when you're going to the places I'm talking about, you're meeting people who are influencers in your city. I mean, I met one of the biggest club managers in this entire city doing that exact thing. I met a couple of the biggest restaurateurs doing that randomly. I didn't even know who they were, right? And so now they're my friends and people that I know in this city, and that's a fantastic opportunity to live your life. So that's what I do at that point, and, tap into it. And then you can, from there, the great thing is it's limitless, right? When you people's contact information, what I used to do a lot more, and I do it sometimes now, is I'll go invite people out to brunch or something. I'm saying, hey, I'm getting a bunch of people together for brunch. Are you available? And they'll either say yes or no. And I'll bring together 8, 10, 12, 16 people to go have brunch. And I'm the guy putting it together. So I get all the social capital, and everyone looks at me as the leader. And now you got all these people who are now inviting you to all these things going on in the city, and private events, birthday parties, private openings and everything else, because they have contacts as well. So you massively increase your social circle, and that helps you create money and opportunities and whatever it is that you want.
Yeah, I could see this even working for a single guy looking to enhance his prospects with dating. I really think it's the same thing here.
Yeah, it's even better, because what you do is you show that you are powerful and you have all these people, so you don't need to work as hard as like other guys do. Your work is cut down by like 9/10 because you're the guys bringing everyone together. And what happens is I walk in a room and people say, "Oh, Jason's the mayor. Jason knows everyone." Well, when it comes to meeting people after that, and if it comes to meeting like women, I mean, it's way easier because everyone's doing the work for you. I mean, if someone walks in a room and says, "You know what, I want you to meet Andrew. He's such a great guy. You've got to meet him." Well, how do you think if there are 3 women there that hear that and someone else is saying that has a massive effect on your opportunity to connect with them?
Yeah, it's really that social value that really builds it up, and even for business too. If there's someone who's interested in looking for a specific type of person, it's like he hears about you, he's more interested in meeting you, he's going to take that conversation more seriously. I like all this stuff here. Or let me just ask you, like, what would be a common like excuse that you hear for a client who like just doesn't want to do this? Like, is it time? Is it money? It's like the location, or what is it?
Fear of rejection and failure.
Okay.
The 2 biggest fears, right? Because people think, oh, how could that work, right? I've never done it before. I've never seen anyone do it before. What happens if it doesn't work? What happens if I introduce 2 people and it doesn't go right? I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And at the end of the day, that's life, right? When we're not confident, we feel challenged, right? And the only way to get confidence is to be competent, which means to do something in a repeated fashion. And so you've got to learn in life that the juice of life is you have to take the leap of faith. And when you take that action, and that leap is when you get the motivation and momentum. You don't get it beforehand. And you just have to start taking courageous action. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And you can do it or not do it. That's everyone's choice. But if you want to have a great life, and you want to have great relationships, and you want to have great business success, you're just going to have to do that. There's no other choice out there. You're never going to be ready or feel that you're ready. Stop waiting around in life. Stop asking for permission from someone else. Give yourself permission and start going out there and doing it, right? I mean, I meet people, and not everyone loves, hanging out with me or saying hi or interacting with me, but I focus on the people that do, not on the people that don't. And you're way more successful. Sure, I do, everyone cares about, what people think, but I did a really valuable exercise a few years ago, and I forced myself to write on a piece of paper, 1 inch by 1 inch, all the people in my life whose opinions actually mattered, that I really actually cared about. And I wrote it down and I carried it with me. And before I'd go out or before I'd do things, I'd look down. And if someone wasn't going to be there on that list, I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care what someone says. Like, if I go up to a woman and she says something, I'm like, I don't care. I'll just move on to someone else. Her opinion doesn't matter at all because it's not on this list. And that really sort of helped me free me from really worrying about like what people were thinking about me. Because the other thing is, like, if you're an entrepreneur and out there and doing something, if someone's not in the arena of having to deal with you have to eat what you kill, then don't I mean, you can't listen to their advice and what's going on because they don't know what you're doing. They're not in the arena. They're not doing battle in the Roman Colosseum with you. They're sitting on the sidelines. And those people don't get a vote. They don't get a say. And you need to move on to people that actually do.
Yeah, I like that analogy. They don't get a vote. They're not in the arena with you. So why do they get a vote? I like that.
They don't, right? I mean, it's like if someone told you, well, you can't do this, you can't build your business, and they're sitting in corporate America getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, I mean, they're not going to understand what you're doing because they don't get it, because they're not in that place. They don't have to live that life. They're not living in that level of uncertainty, and they don't want to, and that's okay, but you can't let that opinion stop you in life. You just can't, and you've got to be very careful of the people that can influence you and what's going on, and I tell people, you need to make sure that your inner circle of people are people that are supporting you, uplifting you, moving you forward. And if they're not, you need to move them out of it. I don't care if that means you have to not interact with mom, dad, whatever. If you can't find a way to put them in a neutral position and they're okay with it, you just have to start getting rid of toxic people because they're going to bring you to your knees eventually.
Yeah. And this is really hitting home, I know, for myself and a lot of the listeners now. Share with us like a testimonial from some of the clients that you worked with who you met them, they were at this state, and then they went through some of your training or they read your book and went through some of the work and did the activities and exercises. And then 3-6 months, a year later, like what happened to them when they really apply these principles?
Well, I can tell you one, and I'll give you 3 examples. One is a really recent one. I started working with a woman who's a CTO of a large company, and she's like 43 years old on her second marriage and has been unhappy for 4 years. And the first session I go in with her, and this is before I even signed her as a client, and this is probably like about 3.5 weeks ago, she was crying most of the session. And the first 2 weeks, every session, you're crying. And, I mean, as a coach, like that's a hard place to be in because I have to let someone get their emotions out. But that affects me sitting there, someone who's crumbling around you. And her marriage is falling apart. And she's just fearful of letting the second marriage fall apart for a lot of reasons. One, because of what the rest of the world is thinking. One, because she's afraid of starting over again. So I have to go through all of this. And, last week, she basically gave her husband an ultimatum. And they're not even living in the same city. And she felt so uplifted that, the last 2 sessions we had, she hasn't cried. She said, it's the best I've felt in 4 years of my life and feel more empowered. And she's getting a divorce, right? So having someone move that fast, who is that one, is pretty incredible. I have another one of my clients I started working with 8 months ago. He's CEO of a really large company, and he's had a lot of internal problems with dealing with people. He has franchise owners who are very large that are causing him a massive amount of stress. So much stress that he thought about quitting. Like it was basically sort of spiraling out of control because he didn't want to do the work. So he told me he was surfing on his computer about 1.5 to 2 hours a day. And he hated his job and he just was buying time. And so we were doing all this work. And last week they had a meeting, the board of directors and a lot of franchise owners and private equity owners and 2 of his biggest critics for the last 8 years he said to me, have never said anything nice to him, good to him, even neutral things to him, publicly went in front of all these people and gave him accolades. And he said to me afterwards, he said, it's all you, because what we've been working on is exactly the difference in everything that's going on. And all the franchise owners he's had a problem with, all but one now are his advocates. And I have another client of mine, which is actually absolutely fantastic, is that I told him in January of this year that I was going to make him $1 billion in the next 24 months. And he looked at me and laughed. And we now have investments in 4 companies. And one of the first things he did was he went to this conference called TED. And it's, the second biggest conference in the world. And he never had gone to TED before or any conference like that. He's extroverted, but also a little introverted. And, he's an executive chairman of a company, but there's 1,000 people going, and he's nowhere on some crazy level where he's done something or invented something or he's not known at all. He killed it there. He ended up meeting Bill Gates. He ended up meeting the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, and Tim Cook sent him an iPhone with a note on it to his hotel room from him, and Tim Cook wrote the note. He ended up meeting like a lot of 30 or 40 influential business people. He ended up getting 4 deals out of it. And now, as of yesterday, he he made one deal that we got him into that the prediction is he invested $6 million to get a 10% interest. And they're predicting in the next 2 years, the company will be worth $10 billion.
Wow.
So it'll make probably anywhere conservatively on $500 million to $1 billion on $6 million investment. And the other couple investments we have are taking off that right now they're probably going to be, totaling $150 million or $200 million. So we're almost there. We're getting there. And I mean, it's just mining information and going to these conferences and places and killing it, right? And there's ways to do all this stuff. So, and what happens is that he shows up in a room and he's extremely powerful. And a great example was he was in a meeting with one of the top 10 Chinese businessmen, most wealthy. And he was in a room with them and they were eating. And this guy said to him across the table, they laughing back and forth. And he says, "I am the dragon and you are the tiger. And the dragon eats the tiger." And my client looked at him and said, "No, the tiger eats the dragon." And then the guy got my client and everyone at the table, there was 15 people, a double shot of tequila. And my client looked at him, put the tequila down, raised it up and took a shot, no lime, no salt, and pounded it back on the table. And this guy loves my client now. And wants to get him in deals over there and everything just because he just was emotionally connected with himself. He just didn't care. He's like, you know what? I don't care how wealthy you are, what's going on. I'm going to be myself. And he does that with everyone he meets. And the magic that's happening is absolutely extraordinary because at the highest levels, people are afraid of two things. One, they don't want to get taken advantage of. And two, no one's telling them the truth because no one's vulnerable and authentic right off the bat. And when you do that, you kill it, especially the higher you're going, because there's less and less people that are doing that because people live of fear.
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, incredible stories here of some of your clients that have gone through and really worked on their social skill sets and building relationships and, and expanding on their network. So I think we really do undervalue how important, I think we want to do things on our own. It's like being self-reliant and being trying to just do everything ourselves.
You can't. We need other people, right? I mean, if you talk to successful people, you see that they had people helping them. And the people that are successful faster are getting help from other people, whether it's coaches, whether it's mentors, whether it's support groups, meaning support groups could be people women and entrepreneurs, right? Or men and entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter. It can be whatever group that is. And that's just one option. But you need to have those structures and places in your life and people because success leaves clues and there's a faster way to get to everything because everything you want to do in life, someone has done already. So you're just repeating the process. There's no one out there that's innovating in something completely that no one else has ever done. It just doesn't happen. I don't care if you're inventing a new technology. There's a lot of those pieces that people have done before that can help you get there a lot quicker.
Yeah, this has been really good. I'm really enjoying this episode here. Now, Jason, I have a part of the show I call the knowledge round. Just going to ask you some rapid fire questions here, get some more little insights from yourself here. So are you ready for the knowledge round, Jason?
I'm ready.
All right, guys, if you're not reading books, then you're getting left behind. Somebody spent their entire life learning some invaluable lesson. And the best format that anyone could ever put it in is a book. It's the shortest, fastest, simplest way to consume content. So I know there are so many books available, and we talk about books all the time on the podcast. So there must be so many running through your head, and you're wondering, where do I begin? Well, I've compiled the top 30 books and success quotes from all of my guests in the last 100 episodes. So you can get them all for free. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can simply download the top 30 books that every man must live by. Again, that's kfmfree.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. What I'm getting from you is you're really clear on there was a point in your career when you got really clear on what it is that you wanted to do and how you were going to do it. And you've really built some, a lot of success, and you've helped a lot of others get even more success in their lives. So what advice would you give to someone who doesn't have that sense of clarity and is really feeling lost and really unsure of their next move and what they should do, not really enjoying the present state that they're in with their work and relationships?
I mean, the first step is always inside, right? Until you have a relationship where you love yourself first, nothing else is going to work. So you have to do inner work on yourself and understand that emotions are your gateway. And if you don't start working on your emotions and understanding where they're coming from, what are your limiting beliefs around it, and understanding the patterns that you've created in your life since you were a little kid all the way through to where you are now, you just won't be successful because they're your blind spots in right now.
Yeah. Okay. And what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
I would say, one, that I was putting myself as Robin in situations like I had with my business partner. I was actually doing the work and actually coming up with everything, but I wasn't taking the lead, and I was letting someone else take credit for part of that in my life. And that was something that was really bad. The other thing was I wasn't asking for help. I was really good at giving to other people, but asking for help felt like death to me, because as growing up, I was by myself. When my parents got divorced, I didn't have siblings. My mom was a nurse anesthesiologist, and she worked overnight. So I had to take care of myself from probably 7 years on, 3 nights a week by myself. So asking for help felt like death because it was survival built in my head. So I would say that. And then, finally, I just started to learn that I had a lead in my life, right? And leading means I had to get out there and make everything happen. And I had to stop waiting around for things to come to fruition.
Yeah. Really good. Really powerful. Can you name a person who's had a tremendous impact on your life? Someone like a mentor? Who is this person and how have they impacted you?
I've had a lot of people in my life. I had a mentor of mine in college that's a professor that really helped me to get outside of the box and think about what I really wanted to do instead of just continually living for other people. I had a mentor most recently, he was a great copywriter that just got me thinking much bigger about my business and asking harder questions. And I found that person just through networking because I couldn't afford to get a good copywriter at all. And this person's amazing. And I just started contacting all the best copywriters I could and seeing if I could make a deal. And I met him through someone else that I actually helped. So it was just fantastic. And he just really motivated me and helped me through some times that were really difficult when I was getting this version of my business off the ground.
Got it. And what would you say are 2 or 3 of your most influential books and why?
I would say a book called Give and Take by Adam Grant, and it's really research-based. He's the professor at Wharton School of Business, and it's all about how giving will get you ahead in life and business. I would say the other couple ones, one is by Brene Brown, and I love her new book, Rising Strong, but Gifts of Imperfection is amazing because it talks about how authenticity and vulnerability are really creating the courage in your life and the way forward. And I find that's an absolutely essential book for business and leadership. And now she's talking more and more about that. And so there's another book too, and I haven't read this one yet, but it's on my list of books, and it's The One by Gary Keller. And I think that's a pretty good one. And I was looking for my library now. The other book, there was another book too, and it's called Childhood Disrupted, and it's a book by woman Donna Jackson, and she talks about how illness is associated with trauma and challenges you have growing up as a child. And they've done all this research and how you have 4 times likelihood to get cancer because of it, die earlier, have heart problems, and almost every illness you can do for people that are having trauma growing up, like divorced parents, maybe you saw violence. I mean, there's tons of other things. There's like a questionnaire that they went through, and they did a survey and research on 20,000 people starting in the 80s, and it's sort of bubbled up, and it's something that I've just actually read, and it's amazing the implications that it has on your health and wellness.
Wow. That seems like a book that we also check out there. I'll be adding that to the wish list. That looks interesting. So now, Jason, this next one here is more of a scenario. So if you had 60 seconds with 20-year-old Jason, your former self, and you had 60 seconds with him, what would you tell him? What would you tell him to do? What would you tell him not to do?
I would say relationships are the key for everything. Build them and reach out to other people. 2, I'd say go be an entrepreneur, because that's where the juice of life is. I'd say 3, the emotions are the gateway for everything. Tap in understanding how you can use them to push your business and life forward.
Anything you tell him not to do?
Yeah, stop waiting on other people to give you permission. 2, stop worrying about what other people think. And I'd say stop 3 stop focusing on what your parents want you to do in life.
Yeah, just letting that sink in. I know that's a big one for a lot of the listeners here. So now, even if you have to summarize a lot of these main points here, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Well, relationships are the key for everything, because everything in life we do is with or through other people. So you have to have great relationships in your personal or professional life. And, you saw an example with my one client who's making all this money. I mean, he'll make more money in the next 24 months than the last 20 years building his business, right? And I mean, in way more, like 5 or 10 times more money that he's made at this point. So that is ultimately the key for everything. I would also say that it starts from the inside. You have to be authentic, vulnerable, speaking your truth, and be generous. And the only way you can do that is to be clear and certain about what's happening in your life, starting from a little kid, and what are the patterns that are really holding you back. And until you get that, you're going to be swimming in your blind spots, and they're going to be holding you back. And your relationships won't be what they should be. Your business won't. And you're just going to be floundering around. I know, because that's exactly what happened to me.
Wow. All right, just taking that in. Really good stuff here. Really good episode going on here, Jason. And so that's going to conclude the knowledge round. What's really getting you going now? Like what's new? What's kind of the future? What's 2016 plans look like? What's really driving you right now?
Well, there's several things. One, I'm working on another book. So when that's going to happen, I'm not 100% sure, but December will be a lot of writing. I'm getting out there, doing more coaching. I'm doing some sales training, and I've found that salespeople are having a lot of problems, and sales training isn't working. And I've done a few experimental groups, and that's going to be expanding. I'll be launching a product around stuff we've talked about today, about how to create relationships and influence and persuasion in your life, which will help people move forward. And I'm just going to be doing a lot more speaking. And then all that stuff, which is great, is the more money you make, I can go to more conferences, invest in myself. And I love that, because the opportunity to network. And I'm hopeful that I might be able to get in to go to TED in March. I don't know, but you got to have a goal. So I'm starting to work on that. And that's a major stretch goal, but you got to shoot for the stars.
Yeah, that's great. And talking about events, I recently was just at an event in San Francisco, was just at another event in Las Vegas, like back to back. And how many events do you go to, and what kind of value do you find when you travel somewhere to go to an event?
I think events are where the magic happens. I just went to a conference in Austin for Fortune magazine. It was a CEO summit. I had one of my clients take me, and it was very expensive. Well, we met some great people. In fact, I set up meetings and met this very famous scientist from Harvard who's very closely associated with Bill Gates. And so my client's helping him. And in terms, that's another inroads to Bill Gates. And I think that'll definitely happen. So you can meet people. So the key thing at these conferences and how you get better at them is, one, go and get to each event, each session, and try to sit closest to the front as you can, because there's less distractions. 2, set up meetings with people if you can that are going, speakers or other people. They may or may not do it, but why not try? I mean, I went to Fortune and Energy Conference. I don't know anything about energy. I mean, nothing. And I sent 25 emails to people, and I ended up getting 6 meetings for my client and I, right? So that was awesome. My client loved it. thought it was like major value. So that was a huge win on that. And I go, I think these events, you got to try different ones and see which ones are useful for you depending on where you are and what you want to focus on. I love doing vertical events sometimes if you want to. I love self-development ones and personal development. They're fantastic. And they're just, you also want to have ones that you can meet people that are doing, things on a big level. And those ones are more expensive. But I just found this great conference I was looking at that's happening next year in Sun Valley, Idaho in March called Dent. And you go and meet 30 or 40 people and you go to dinner the first night and you're doing all these great sessions and they're really out of the box. And, it's $2,000 and that's the challenge. These things are not cheap, but you're going to get tons of value. You're going to meet tons of people and you add to your network. And that stuff will hit your bottom line in a major way or change your life enough that you'll be able to take leaps that you never thought were possible.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from this whole episode is like really putting yourself out there, even if you have to invest money, even if you have to put time, but really putting yourself out there and being authentic, being real, and really just not really caring about the opinions of other people to really free yourself to be your truest self, like your best self. And that's what's really going to connect with a lot of the people that are around watching.
Yeah. And I think the thing is too, is I have so many friends here that spend thousands of dollars going on vacation. And what are they doing? The essence of vacation is escape. Yes, it is unplugging, but it is an escape. I'd say, why not spend that same money and go to a conference that's going to help change your life? Start using the resources that you have in ways that are going to help you for the next 12 months. And I guarantee you, at the end of 12 months, you will be way farther ahead than you've probably been the last 5 or 10 years. It happens to every single person, no matter what they do. And it doesn't all have to work, right? Because even things that don't work will lead you on the right path to finding things that do work, right? Life is a zig and a zag. It's not linear. And when you start figuring that out and understanding that, you'll be way farther ahead, because then you'll see that there's not failure. Every time you do something that doesn't work, there's a lesson. And if you actually pause and learn the lesson, then you can just turn it up and have, exponential growth in your life.
Yeah, really good. All right, Jason, this has been a fantastic episode. Learning so much. I know my audience is really, really liking this. So go ahead and give yourself a plug on how the audience can follow up with you moving forward.
So they can go to my website. It's beextraordinary.tv. That's be extraordinary, all one word, .tv. And you can get free white papers there on relationships, on networking, on self-development. A link for my book, Social Wealth, that's on Amazon. Coaching options there, and down the road some products and other things that'll be on there. And there's videos too on YouTube.
And don't forget to go to Amazon and check out the book Social Wealth by Jason Treu. It's spelled Treu. All right, Jason, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story and a lot of the lessons from your book and from your own just journey. It's been very invaluable.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on the show and speaking to your tribe.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get 3 tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.